Why is it Omar Davies's fault? What was it that he did? You recall that the beginning of the financial meltdown started with the run on the banks. But how did Omar Davies' decision contribute to that? Some of you may remember, some of you may have forgotten, and many of you who were too young to remember perhaps weren't alive at the time. Here is the reason. I went through the GLEA archive. I recommend it. It costs a bit of money, yes, but occasionally I would suggest that you could go through it if you're interested in history, that is. I know many people aren't. And anyway, I strolled through um, the GLEA archive. I found an article dated December 27, 1996, and the headline was Sentry Collapses. Ministry of Finance seizes control of failing bank. So I'm going to read the article for you, and there is something that stood out for me, and I want you to stay with me because not only is this history, but it is the what would they call it, precursor. It was the beginning of what eventually became a Finsac bailout for the depositors and policyholders, pensioners, and so on, but a collapse for the owners and shareholders of these businesses. But before I continue, let me give you my customary welcome to Jamaica 411. Thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by, keeping me company as usual. If you're here with me for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please subscribe, like the video, share, as well as feel free to leave your comments in the comment section. To my regular viewers, as well as my subscribers, welcome back. Always nice to have you and lovely to read all your comments. I remember who done it. And there is Ann Doll. Don't think I'm going to forget anybody, I'm going to ball out on a name. There's Ann Doll and Electro, several Jones, some Jonies, and many others. And if we have any time in this video, I'll read some of the comments from the previous video or videos and responses that I gave or give some response. I hope you like that as well. If so, please say so in the comment section so that we can have an open discussion with everyone. What is it to that? Sounds good? Great. All right, so you guys are going to go ahead now and give the video a like because you're getting good stuff here, and also to share all about the place so we can get the message out. I do share as well in my groups and WhatsApp groups and so on. And then you can return, and then we'll, of course, get down to business. And as always, I thank you all in advance. Great. So now that you're back, let's get down to business. As a background, I think you may all or some would remember what happened with Don Crawford. Why it was that Don Crawford and Sentry National Bank found itself into the crosshairs of Omar Davies. You remember at the time that there was a whole lot of instability in the foreign exchange market, and there was what was known as the black market in foreign exchange. Yes, and it was revealed that the Bank of Jamaica had trunk loads of Jamaican dollars driving about the place, buying foreign exchange from people. Now, at the time, there was an effort to keep the money artificially stabilized at, I think it was $23 something, right? And the Bank of Jamaica was touting it that that is what it should be. And it was reported in the GLEA, and I think they must have shown photograph of some agents of Bank of Jamaica out there selling the foreign exchange for a higher rate. And that, of course, caused a big scandal. What happened with Don Crawford, now, at some point, not sure if it was before or after this scandal, that he went and I think bought foreign exchange at $25 and something against, remember, it's supposed to be a free market, but they had a problem, and no matter what they did with the interest rate, them just could not prevent people from speculating. Meaning, whenever the money is devaluing, those persons who have a whole heap of Jamaican dollars, fully aware of what happened in the 70s when the money moved from 71 Jamaican cents to $1, right? So when the money moved now to the 20 odd dollars, it meant that those persons who had say $10 million, that money could not buy what the current the money the 10 million of the 1996 could buy. That's just as plain as simple. And it's not only the foreign exchange movement, it was a high inflation that was taking place for a very long time. So it means that what the 10 million could buy in 76, it could not buy the same in 96, 20 years later. So that's that. So they decided then now to have an artificial hold on this money. You had Butch Stewart came up with this initiative and so on. And Crawford went against that. And when it came out, Omar went after him, right? And perhaps up into him feelings, as Comrade Natalie Nita told some comrades out in St. Thomas the other day, them up in them feelings and she rock go down and she rock come up with them, how them up in them feelings, you know. Yes, so Omar being up in him feelings, called on Crawford to a meeting and did not keep that meeting a secret. It came out, right? So this now is what Omar did. And I will have a few comments as usual. So let me start reading. So it says Sentry collapses, Ministry of Finance seizes control of failing bank. I should also point out that in Jamaica of that time, there has never been in the history of Jamaica the failure of a bank. Why? All of the banks that we had up to a certain point in the 1960s and some part of the 70s were controlled by foreigners, overseas banks, right? Canadian banks, British banks, Barclays Bank, as well as Citibank from the US, among others. So if they were even into financial worries, the parent company just bail them out and sell them out. You follow? But they never collapsed. This now was a different scenario. This now, you're talking about locally owned institutions that had no backing from foreign. But still, the Jamaican people were convinced that since it never happened in the past, there's no way it can happen. It's impossible, they used to tell me when we're trying to talk sense into them, and it's impossible, these banks can't close, can't shut down, can't fail. That was their logic. Sensible people, we go to university talking them nonsense, Yes, man. So they took the money and they put in the banks and they were getting high interest rate, all these shaky banks. Me not frightened. Me keep my money in a Scotia bank. You understand? And when me take out my loan, it was with Scotia Bank. You follow me? Right? So me never had no worries like them was end up a ball. I had to be bailed out by the government. But anyway, so that was the mindset of the people. Neither could the banks fail, but they did not anticipate that the Victoria Mutual Building Society, which passed through 2 World War, right, and other chaos in Jamaica and survived, and never thought that one would go under either. So that was the mentality I wanted to understand. So let me start reading now. So the original report was made on the 11th of July 1996. And it says here, so 11th July 1996, after more than a year of negotiations and failed attempts to raise additional capital to solve the financial crises at Sentry National Bank, the Ministry of Finance stepped in yesterday and took control of its main operations. So this taking over of the bank occurred on the 10th of July 1996. All right? So in a release late last night, you hear that? In a release late last night, the ministry said it has suspended the operations of Sentry National Bank, Sentry National Merchant Bank and Trust Company, and Sentry National Building Society. You heard that? So I want you to put yourself in the position of those persons poor investors, depositors in banks, who have money in building societies, insurance companies, and even Scotiabank, CIBC, and Citibank. Just put yourself in their position. You have a mindset that in the history of Jamaica there has never been a bank failure, never been an insurance company, the large one, and you know in your own mind that the government could not allow even Victoria Mutual Building Society to collapse, because if that were ever to happen, then there would be panic in the society and a whole heap of other things would occur. This is your mindset. So you were going along all the while. The stock market was shooting through the roof and going with itself. And of course, inflation had gone with itself too. And so was the devaluation of the currency, and the prices were just going up, and there was just overall chaos. But at least you trust that the banks would never fail. You hear that things shaky, but the banks would never fail. But you see, those who were in the know, those who were more practical people who had millions, they were slowly withdrawing the money from these banks, but nobody knew. So you as an ordinary depositor, go put your money in your account. And those who are at the top will have the money. They knew that this thing is not sustainable. And maybe they even had inside information, right? So they were slowly removing the money. And what the banks had to do was to call upon the BOJ for credit, right? And then, of course, there is this business of the overdraft, and they increased the overdraft figure to 100, almost 20 something percent, right? And then the banks, Lord of mercy, it was just pure chaos. But at least there was trust in the bank. You're following me? When this news came and people woke up the morning, because this news was made the night before, Omar didn't just take over the bank, and shut his mouth, and make people find out. Omar made the announcement to tell people in circumstances that I just described to you that he's taking over a bank, a well-known bank, the merchant bank and trust company and the building society. When the people hear that now, having heard that these banks were in trouble, which they did not believe, because we Jamaican people, we only believe what we want to believe. Not true, right? We hear, but we don't believe because it never happened before. In the night, Amar made the notice and tell everybody what he's going to do, right? The following morning, when people woke up and heard this news all over, it would have been in the GLEA and RJR and GABC, and I don't know if the Observer was around at the time, but people would have been carrying this news. You can imagine the panic and first of all, the shock. And when they come out and then shock, the panic that took place. And I'm saying to you that this announcement and this action taken by Davies, perhaps in his vexation because of Don Crawford's open defiance of government policy, right? And not to mention when they were quietly speaking to him for a year, trying to take over the bank, trying to negotiate, he was stubborn. He didn't want to let go, right? And Omar, in his particular wisdom, which turned out to be a disaster for many, right, went and made this announcement and caused the subsequent panic in the society, which led to people now taking the money out of the similar banks, the Eagle Commercial Bank, the Workers Bank. Well, that was always in trouble from day one. And the other financial institutions, right? There was a mad rush for people to grab the money. And that was what the start of the beginning of the end of the financial debacle. Well, let's continue reading to see what happened next. So, having made the announcement that the Ministry of Finance was taking over the operations of Sentry National Bank, they went and they put in charge Richard Downer of Pricewaterhouse Associates has been appointed temporary manager of the three institutions with the objective of taking an inventory of assets and liabilities. He will also be charged with looking after the public interest of Sentry's depositors, and creditors. Lord Omar, you could have put out a better statement than that. You could have come out the night and say you're taking over the operations. It's nothing to worry about. They have, fallen into difficulties, but the depositors and the savers, they will be protected. That should have been thought out before, Omar. You should have figured it's 1 year, my peeps, that they have been negotiating with this man, Don Crawford, about what was happening in his operations. And if the people believe that money is safe in Sentry, who fell into difficulties, the other one, them who figures that maybe for them bank in difficulty, wouldn't worry. I want if you understand me, my peeps. So when you talk about the failure of the financial sector, right? They were limping along and going on at a soul, didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. Not certain people, though, down at the bottom, but they certainly one of them at the top knew, right? And they would have been jittering, but that self-belief that they have would have paused and caused pause of them doing anything that would have caused a collapse. And the government could have found the time to do all the things that they did eventually with Finsac, right? And the people still would have kept the money there and everything would have been smooth in the transition. But no, man. Omar decided I'm going to tell everybody, say I'm going to lock down this bank. And that was that. Well, let us continue reading and see what happened next. And they are quoting now. This action has been taken to protect the depositors of the institutions and members of the public. These institutions have been found to be insolvent and have been unable to raise the necessary capital to eradicate the insolvency and put themselves on a positive path, said the release from the ministry, The decision to seize control of the bank comes less than 2 weeks after Sentry's annual general meeting, where it posted losses in the year to April 1995 of 1.1 billion, and major shareholder Mr. Neville Bly put his 20% stake up for sale for 140 million. When contacted yesterday, Mr. Bly said he was unaware of the decision by the Ministry of Finance to take control of the bank, but that the writing was on the wall. That's what they quoted him as saying. A few days after the GLEA revealed the large 1995 loss and details of the annual general meeting, Central National Bank Chairman Mr. Don Crawford wrote a memo to staff indicating that a conclusion to the bank's financial problems was nearing an end. The text of the memo can be seen on page 3A of the current GLEA, which would have been the December 27, 1996. When the GLEA contacted him now, Mr. Crawford was unavailable for comment late last night. That was, remember now, that is the 10th of July, right? 1996. Following checks with his office and home, the GLEA was told that he was off the island. But Central National Bank President Balmain Brown said the ministry's action had taken him by surprise. Imagine that. You lose 1.1 billion, but the government's action was surprising. Oh well, if you say so. Perhaps he was laboring under the assumption, just like everybody else at the time, that the financial sector and the banks cannot fail. It's impossible for them to fail. Mercy, it's like the Titanic. Anyhow, let me continue. He added that he could not comment further because he was in discussions with Ministry of Finance officials regarding the future of the bank. And they're quoting him now. I don't know where we go from here. Everyone is calling, but it's too early to tell, said Mr. Brown. The apparent collapse of Central National Bank is the latest in a series of failures in the country's financial sector. In December 1994, the Ministry of Finance used similar powers to close down the operations of Blaze financial institutions after alleged malpractice. There is no suggestion of malpractice at Sentry. Temporary managers were again appointed and Blaze depositors voted to accept a government bailout package offer of 90% of their deposits. But come on, people, man. Shame on you. If they treated Blaze depositors this way, why do you think they wouldn't treat you the same way? Well, maybe you thought that the assumption is that government is corrupt, that maybe you thought that this was a special case and you may not be so lucky. Maybe. So I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Do you find all this interesting? Are you a lover of history like myself? I love history from ever since I go school. From I go prep school, primary school, high school, right through. Still love history even at my, well, elderly years. Anyhow, let me continue. So, under the GLEA now, it says here now, temporary management. So they're going to tell us what that is about. So, they say yesterday the ministry seized control through its powers under the Banking Act of 1992, Financial Institutions Act 1992, and Bank of Jamaica Building Societies Regulation to assume temporary management of Sentry's three principal operations. And when they say temporary management, the person went in to manage, would have sort out their affairs and liquidate what needs to be liquidated and pay who needs to be paid. And then if the operation can be, fixed and put back in operation, they would put it back in operation. So it was nothing to be worried about at the time. But then again, they may decide that the problem is so massive that there's nothing to do more than shut it down. And nobody wants to have their money tied up in that way because you're not going to have access to your money. And that is part of the problem that people were seeing. So nobody else wanted to get caught in that. Then just draw the money out and put it to the Bank of Nova Scotia. Very possibly with NCB, because I'm sure they never suspected anything with NCB at all, being the biggest bank. Anyhow, the GLEA report goes on to say, this follows last August's decision by Finance Minister Dr. Omar Davies, who stepped into Sentry National Bank's operations, ordering a capital injection from its shareholders in the wake of a liquidity crunch. More than $3.5 billion in cash support is subsequently understood to have been provided by the Bank of Jamaica, of which about $1 billion is said to have been repaid. So what this is saying is that apparently the year before, in August, Omar Davies had ordered the shareholders to raise the money, the $3.5 billion that was necessary to rescue them, and evidently it did not happen. So Bank of Jamaica had to give them that $3.5 billion as a sort of loan, and then they only repaid $1 billion, so they owe the government $2.5 billion. That is what that is saying. Now, when you think about it, it is crazy because all they had to do was to raise the amount of ordinary shares, put it out in the market, and sell shares and recover the money that they needed. Jamaican people were buying shares in those days. I just don't understand the decisions of these people. But let me continue. In a bid to muster the cash needed to solve its liquidity problems, Sentry's chairman, Mr. Don Crawford, was thought to have been negotiating a deal involving the possible sale of its subsidiary, the Jamaica Grand Hotel in Ocho Rios. This, along with two other possible deals, was understood to be at the heart of the bank's attempt to raise at least $70 million US. But major shareholder Mr. Bly and Central National Bank chairman Mr. Crawford fell out of grace last year after two failed attempts to strike a deal for Bly to inject $500 million additional capital into the bank. Remember, Bly was the major shareholder, right? As was then required by the finance minister. Under the deals, Mr. Bly would have taken a greater stake in the bank, but instead he resigned from the board last September. Apparently, he probably had his own opinion as to what should happen, and there was a disagreement. There was also said to be another rescue package under consideration, a consortium of small bankers calling themselves the Owners Club offered to take up where GLEA left off, but this too fell through. No, you want my opinion? I think that this Owners Club is a, well, how should I put it? Well, let me put it nicely. I think it's a hoax. I don't think any such thing exists. You know why? Because the name just too plain. I mean, the Owners Club. Why not say the Business Owners Club? Or the Tapanaris Owners Club. Just a bland old plain old Owners Club. Even Subaru had a Subaru Owners Club. You have Piju Owners Club. I just don't believe that any such club existed. Sorry, Omar, I don't believe you when it comes to this point. I think that it is somebody's opinion that these persons were behaving as if they were a kind of an owners club where they got together and made decisions together. That's just my view. The GLEA further reported the $1.1 billion loss posted by the bank for the year to April 1995, which was the previous year, was a major bone of contention among the more than 30 shareholders at the annual general meeting. The high interest cost of more than 50% per annum on non-performing loans is said to have accounted for most of the loss. In some instances, the Bank of Jamaica is thought to have charged up to 120% on loans to the bank. That means that $3.5 billion, the bank was supposed to pay 120%. What would that be? Let me do the calculation for you. Come on, all you maths brains, help me out here, man. What is 120% of 3.5 billion? My little maths tell me it is $4.2 billion. Now, you work it out and tell me for that you get. And then make we think this thing through. Sentry would have borrowed 3.5 billion. That was, I think they call them advance, right? In order to deal with its liquidity issues. The Bank of Jamaica charged them 120% on this money. What were they supposed to do? Pay back $3.5 billion plus $4.2 billion? Or were they supposed to pay back $4.2 billion? What do you think? I mean, if it was 50%, it would have been, what, 1.75 billion added to the 3.5? Yes. So Sentry borrowed $3.5 billion and was expected to pay back 4.2 plus 3.5, that's $7.7 billion. How the hell did the Bank of Jamaica expect them to survive that? Where were they supposed to get $7.5 billion and them already in trouble? And this is not Sentry alone. I don't understand the logic of these people. You know what? I think, my peeps? I think we'll stop put these people who go to university, whether they go University of the West Indies, University of London, Harvard University, or Yale, right? Stop take them and put them for run with business, because it look like say them don't benefit. Them benefit from having a degree to give them a big job, which give them big pays. And we're not going to bad mind them, right? We love that they're making money. Nothing wrong with that at all. But at the same time, where is them brain? Is it that they just regurgitate what it is? Well, that is how it works anyway, right? That is how the brainwash system works. And having been brainwashed, them can't think after that. I mean, yes, you may have been trying to discourage them from running a business in such a way that they will need to come to you for the money. And you want them to go out there. All Sentry had to do, my peeps, was to do what you see other companies do when they want money. Increase them shares. As a matter of fact, that is what Daring Bunting and Golding was doing. When they needed money, them never take the money from nobody, Them increase them volume of shares and go out there and sell it. Why they did not do it? Because if they had done it and gone on the stock market, which was doing quite well, they would have raised the money, as Separate did, and deal with them problem while them wait until the Jamaica Grand and others were sold. I don't get it. Anyway, let me continue. So, it says here that the 120% charge on the loans to the bank from the BOJ Provisions for bad loans and foreign exchange losses also contributed to the huge loss. And the sources said, at the annual general meeting, shareholders heard that Sentry National Bank's asset base dropped from 8.6 billion in June 1995 to 6.6 billion in September of the same year. So in one quarter, then slid further to 6.4 billion by year end, according to BOJ figures. And this is the long and short of what happened to Sentry Bank. Oh my goodness, it gets worse every time you read these things. What it is that we have employed at the Bank of Jamaica, the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, and the minister himself. And when you think about it, one of the major problems, I think, in this country is the fact that we are unable to select the right people to match the job that they're in, because we rely so much on degrees and not rely on what it is that people have in them head, right? We look first at them degrees and have no concern about what they have in them head. So we put these people in position and they clearly don't have a brain to think themselves through even a wet paper bag. And this has been and still remains a problem in this country. What they're saying basically is Sentry collapsed because of, well, they didn't much outline what it was that Don Crawford was doing. So it was when they sent in the overseas forensic experts that they discovered what it was that they were doing, right? And that is one thing. But at this point, a bank is in trouble. Why would you want to heap the pressure on these banks by further increasing them problems, by increasing the overdraft, them taking an advance from the Bank of Jamaica to 120%? If you wanted to be helpful, all of you, including the Minister Omar Davies, right? If you wanted to be helpful, what you ought to have done is give them the advance at, say, 10% or 5% or 0%, just to see them through, right? Find some other way, but then I guess you did not want to benefit the shareholders, which is what would have happened. And you wanted the shareholders to put the money in, right? They could sell shares in the time in which it took between the time when the ministry asked them to put money in it. Don't come to the Bank of Jamaica, you need to put money in it. And the time when it collapsed, which was a year later. They had time enough to do all of that, but they didn't. So, all round failure, and all the persons involved, in my view, are to be blamed. Both the management at Sentry as well as the Ministry of Finance. They are to be blamed, right? And that's all I have to say on that score. So let me thank you for listening, sharing, subscribing, and giving the video a thumbs up. You give the video a thumbs up already? Great. So until I upload my next video, you take very good care of yourselves and walk good.